الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين سيدنا ومولانا وحبيبنا محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم تسليما كثيرا. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, everyone. Inshallah, you are all doing well on this night of the 16th of Rajab. Inshallah, Sunday, February 28th. For those again who are keeping track of these classes, we are well into chapter 4 of Agenda to Change Our Condition, alhamdulillah. So I'm really excited to jump into this presentation. Let me go ahead and screen share. Just give me a moment here. Okay, alhamdulillah. Here we go. So we have, as I said, we're in the middle of chapter 4. Just a quick recap before I get into what we're doing here. Last 2 weeks ago when we started chapter 4, we talked about, again, practical exercises for us to do to attain taqwa. So we started off defining taqwa, what it is, and then explaining that the exercises that are in this chapter all have to do with the 8 inroads of darkness to the heart, how the spiritual heart can be affected, and the different pathways where disease and bad habits and vices and sin and heedlessness, all of these things that we do as humans can affect our spiritual heart. It's through these inroads, right? Through our prayer, through the tongue, eyes, ears, stomach, private parts, hands, and feet. And so, alhamdulillah, in this chapter, we're going to talk about each section or each inroad, and then also explain different exercises that are to be done to protect those inroads. And you'll see this ongoing theme of 40 days, 40 days. And because, of course, we know that habits are formed, we're creatures of habits, but habits are formed with practice. And so this idea of 40 days comes from a chapter in the Quran where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala promised to meet Musa after 40 days. So we take from that wisdom, inshallah, that there's something special about that number. And we make a commitment to work on the exercise that is suggested for the full duration of those 40 days. So let's go ahead and again recap quickly. We talked about guarding the prayer, right? And the importance of that, and just different verses in the Quran that also mention the importance of guarding our prayer, establishing our prayer and guarding our prayer. And then we also went on to more verses from the Quran here. And now today we're going to talk about guarding the tongue. So you can go back always, for those again who are joining us, and watch the previous recording to get each section. But for today, we're going to talk about guarding the tongue. So I'm going to be reading from the book, and you will have some information on the slides here. But we start off right away with this quote from Qadi Abu Bakr, where he says, "Guard your tongue and protect it from lying, and realize that it expresses your inward state. It reveals to you the depth of your knowledge and your practice." And of course, this is very powerful, this reminder that we, regardless of how we present ourselves, of how much effort we take externally or outwardly to pretend to be someone or to act as someone, it really is what reveals us, or what reveals our character is our speech, is the truthfulness of our speech. And so here the tongue has one noble quality: truthfulness, right? If you are a person of truth, of haqq, then this is the highest level of nobility that you can have for this particular, again, aspect, right? The tongue. So let's move on to the next slide here. This was also something for us to ponder about. The tongue has over 20 destructive qualities that are rooted in the following 4 qualities, right? So subhanAllah, thinking about, again, this idea of 20 destructive qualities, which are lying, backbiting, argumentation, and engaging what does not concern you. We, as Muslims, we've heard of this, right? But we really do have to contemplate why these are such destructive things. Lying some people, will justify lying because they think they're going to get some benefit out of lying, but they don't realize that lying is like it's a cancer. It spreads. It's not something that is easily containable. It's like a fire. It will just spread into more lies. It's hard to even keep up with lies. And I've seen this play out with individuals who lie to their spouses, or children who lie to their parents, or parents who lie to their children, or coworkers. When you start habituating to being someone who is deceitful, then it's very difficult to maintain that, because it's hard to keep up with what did I tell who, how did I say it, what didn't I say, and it's too difficult. So you're also impacting other people, right? Your lie may benefit you, but if you're harming other people, that has a ripple effect, and of course you will be held accountable. So moving beyond just the initial benefit or objective that you justify it, and looking at it from a more holistic lens will help you to understand why it's so destructive, right? Something that destroys things, it destroys relationships. Trust is earned and trust is built. And as soon as you start to be deceitful, it's very hard to win trust again. Talk to anybody who's ever been cheated on, it's very difficult. They will always in the back of their mind have this doubt, because the idea that you could even create a lie or fabricate is hard for some people when they've trusted you. Like, how could you even do that? Because it's a character flaw. So again, and we're talking about like really big lies, but even small lies without wisdom or without reason. There's certain situations, of course, we know that it's permissible when you're bringing two people who are in a conflict together and you want to bring the hearts together. It's permissible to maybe embellish a little bit there, and to say something to bring those hearts together. So there are certain circumstances where we can do that, but to make this a habit and not be mindful of how dangerous it is really irresponsible. And I would especially speak to parents who are frequently being deceptive in front of their children, but not really thinking about it. If your child has legitimate questions about something and you maybe are impatient, you've got work, you have other things to do, and you decide to just tell them some story, that's not true. Let's say you planned a vacation and then you had to cancel it. Well, but then when they ask you, you create this elaborate tall tale. They say like these. Sometimes people can get really like, why? What's the necessity of having to fabricate a really wrong? It's just not modeling good behavior. But there's no necessity to do that. Sometimes the child needs to experience the reality of that life isn't always going to go their way, and if something has to be canceled, like COVID, COVID came upon us. So if you had a vacation planned to go to Disneyland and then COVID happened, and you think, oh, I don't want to bother and tell the child the real reason because it might scare them, and you kind of think of all these reasons not to tell them the truth, but then you go and tell them a lie in place of that truth. You may think that that was a good way to protect their heart, but at the same time, you're not thinking of what you're doing. You're setting them up with, with this, or modeling this behavior that is not acceptable in our faith, to just, habituate to lying without reason. And so I really emphasize being truthful and honest. And if they have to be disappointed, because yes, they can't go somewhere, or a friend can't come over, or they can't get a gift, for example. Sometimes kids want toys, and parents, like I said, will go to these really extreme lengths without, really thinking, what am I doing? Why not just tell them the truth? This gift is not, we can't afford it right now, or I don't want to, give you this gift because you have so many other toys you haven't played with. Just be honest, right? So anyhow, that's just, one example, but, really looking at the ripple effects, or the outside of just what you think is happening, there are other effects of the lies. And so that's what you want to remember, and make sure that it's not something that you habituate yourself to. Backbiting, same thing. You may feel justified because you're angry, someone hurt you, someone upset you, or maybe not. Maybe you just heard a story or a rumor, but you thinking, what's the big deal? I'm picking up the phone and telling this one person, who are they going to tell? Why is it such a big deal? They shouldn't have done it in the first place. If they did it, it's my right to talk about it. Sometimes people will come up with a lot of these, again, justifications for it. But at the end of the day, you being, the type of person that relishes in talking about other people, especially if it's a negative story. Certainly nobody backbites about someone when they're in a good light, right? It's always negative. But if you enjoy that and you're the one that wants to always keep that rumor and gossip mill going, you really have to take a step and say, Astaghfirullah, what am I doing? This is in the Quran, very clearly prohibited. It's prohibited throughout, the many hadith that also support that. But to think that it's okay for you because, well, I feel wronged and I feel angry, and whatever you say to yourself, this is also something you have to stop and realize. There are consequences to these things. Rumors are spread and lives can be actually destroyed. You telling someone that you think is in confidence something that you heard or that or that you're just, venting to them about something, you don't know if that person can contain it, right? You don't know if they're really going to be able to keep your trust. What if they have the same feeling of wanting to share it that you had, right? You wanted to share it and you did. What if you tell them, don't tell anybody and then they feel this burning sensation within their heart to share it too. Now you're responsible. You had knowledge of something, or you shared something that was not pleasant, but it's spreading like wildfire again. Well, you're going to be responsible for all of the people impacted by that. And again, lives can be destroyed. Families can be broken up. These can have very, very serious consequences. So we have to be very careful about ever justifying that. Argumentation is another thing. This is a time, especially on social media, you see this quite often. And if you're not on social media, alhamdulillah, this doesn't apply to you. But if you are on social media and you think that, getting into online debates and scandals and just always inserting your opinion in every situation and fighting and using fighting words in defense of the deen or what have you. And, again, people will justify their behavior all the time. You have to step back and realize there are plenty of proofs in our deen that talk about how reprehensible it is to be one who's always giving into argumentation. It's not part of our tradition to do that. It's a very low quality to have, to be just that person who's looking to incite people all the time and just stir trouble up. We are people of peace, salam, right? We're supposed to afshu salama bainakum. We're supposed to spread peace. We're not supposed to spread disharmony and strife and fighting and what have you. So really just holding yourself and realizing if you're arguing for the sake of your nafs, you're going to enjoy it. It's going to feel good because you feel, puffed up and it's satisfying your ego. If you're, really defending something like the deen, or maybe someone says something that's about another person and you want to defend. Excuse me, sorry, that has never happened before, forgive me for that. But if if that's the situation where you want to defend someone, then you do it with grace. You do it the proper way. You do not argue, you do not insult, you don't attack, you don't give in to the feeling of excitement because you're arguing. You're doing it because you want to establish truth, right? Maybe there's something that needs to be clarified. And so if you have that niyyah of, okay, I'm in this discussion, debate, argument, whatever it is, but my intention is to clarify a position, to speak the truth, or to quiet, to bring harmony to this discussion, those are noble things to do. But if it's just about your ego and wanting some sort of attention from it, certainly this would not be acceptable. And then the last is also very important, engaging in what does not concern you. من حسن إسلام المرء تركه ما لا يعني, right? The part of the beauty of one's Islam is to leave that which doesn't concern them. This is, again, minding your own business in a nutshell. So when we talk about guarding our tongue, these 4 qualities are so essential. The last one especially, because we, again, live in a time where people assume that just because people's lives are more public than ever before, that it's an invitation to look, to peer into people's lives, to become obsessed with what so and so is doing. But it's actually really just a low quality. I've said this so many times before. I don't know if I've said it here, but when we were younger, there was a category or a group of, or a behavior, I should say, that was considered really low. And, that was like to be a peeping Tom or a voyeur, right? Someone who's always looking into people's lives. And we're talking like physically, like, right? Someone who is a peeping Tom is actually looking into people's windows, right? They're looking into people's private spaces, cars, and just kind of like, just being obsessed, lurking, right? This was very like astaghfirullah, that would be a horrible thing if for someone to call you that. And they were really creepy people who were usually, offenders, and they had other, criminal backgrounds. These were not good people who did these things. But if you really think about our society and what we've become, we have created a society where this is now normal behavior. It is normal to spend hours, and people do this literally hours, going through a person's entire Facebook history and Instagram, reels and images and stories or whatever, and just keep looking and looking and looking, and you see this sometimes if you're ever on these platforms. If you're on them, you'll see someone liking a picture of yours from like 6 years ago, and then you got to think like, wait a second, that's not something I put up today or yesterday. What were they doing? How did they get there? They must have gone down that rabbit's hole, right? But why? That's the question I have. If someone is posting something and you just happen to see it, that's one thing, because we have the news feed. But if you're lurking, if you're looking for information, and kind of just, it's just not something good to do. And I always say, again, this is just my opinion, but if you're on social media and you're trying to spread good and you're creating content, or this is your business, your livelihood, inshallah, your intention is to put good out there. But if that's not what you're doing, and you end up really spending a lot of time consuming things, and you're just lurking, you got to check yourself. Like, that's not good. I shouldn't be worried about what so-and-so is doing, what restaurant they're eating at, what coffee did they order, what new purse did they get. And people, they share this information, and that's a whole other conversation. We just live in a world where these things are now highly encouraged. But all of us have the responsibility to stop and ask ourselves, why am I so interested? Why do I care in the first place about what so-and-so is doing? Or, where are they vacationing? And, what restaurant are they staying at? And people will go to great lengths to research this information because they're curious. And that curiosity is what we're talking about here. So, and engaging, of course, in what does not concern you is, first of all, having that curiosity, but then meddling and being meddlesome and inserting yourself into conversations and situations that you're not, it's none of your business. You shouldn't be, inserting yourself. So if you see two people squabbling in front of you, maybe it's a husband and wife or a mother and a child or what have you, if there's no harm being done, you don't need to go and offer unsolicited advice. You don't need to go and intrude their space. And sometimes these things can take form or can happen in public spaces. But again, you just have to know your boundaries and know that when we practice mindfulness of these things, we will know that that's just something we shouldn't be doing. But when we don't, and we think that we can say whatever we want to whoever we want, then that is how these behaviors take form, is because there's no regulation, there's no resistance, there's no control. So very important chapter on, again, these four qualities. So I'm going to now just read a little bit from the book here. It says, if you're able to overcome them, it's speaking about these four qualities, then all the others, the other 20, are removed with ease. In order for us to remove these qualities that lead people to destruction, we must exert great effort and struggle. This is mujahada, right? Mujahada nafs is the struggle against one's soul to be better, right? To do that which pleases Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You have to fight your own nafs. It's literally like a war, a battle with your own nafs, because your nafs inclines to these things. The nafs is weak. The nafs is indulgent, so it likes to lie, it likes to backbite because it's lazy. It's easier sometimes to not tell the truth. It's easier sometimes to, like I said, give in to those emotions and want to backbite. So when you're doing mujahada, you're actually fighting against your own self. And then now they're giving you the remedy, right? The exercise. So the following is an exercise designed to help eliminate these qualities that have become daily habits for far too many among us, and in fact, if we persist in them, are counted as enormities with Allah. That's really serious. If we habituate to these things, they're small, right? But small sins add up, and now they've become kaba'ir, right? Kaba'ir are big sins. So because you've done this for years, you can't, excuse yourself and go, it's just a little lie. What's the big deal? No, you've accumulated years of doing this. So now, in the sight of Allah, it's considered a big sin. So this is really dangerous. Imam Malik stated, truly a man utters words to which he attaches no importance, and by them he falls into the hellfire, Jahannam. Astaghfirullah. We should all seek refuge in Allah from that, because that is self-delusion, right? It's that you're so far removed from reality that you think your careless words there's no impact to them. But this is clearly telling us words are very powerful, and we have to hold ourselves into account and make sure that when we speak, we're speaking truth, or as the Prophet ﷺ said, say, that which is pleasant, or remain silent. Speak truthfully, speak beautifully, speak well, or don't say anything, but don't excuse, these foul behaviors, because this hadith could apply, may God forgive us, that we carelessly say something about someone, we carelessly deceive someone, we carelessly argue and maybe break someone's heart, we carelessly butt our noses into someone else's business, thinking it's not a big deal, but then a'udhu billah, it's that very thing that actually is the cause of our ruin. So the exercise that they suggest is as follows. Commit every day for 40 days to leave the aforementioned four habits, each morning making a vow to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So now what I love about this is that you're making a commitment to refrain from these four things by using your tongue to make a vow. So it's restraining yourself, but now proactively using the tongue in the best way, which is to make this vow where you say, I vow to not lie, okay? To not backbite, argue, or speak in matters of no concern to me for this entire day. Okay, so this is what we call the condition phase, musharata. Okay, so this is, you're making a shart, or like a vow with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that I'm trying to withhold myself, and I will do this from the morning until the day. Being really mindful, being conscious of yourself, self-aware throughout the day, right? So through the day, you are vigilant in observing and noting the times when you did not fulfill the condition. This is guarding the condition, which is murabata, excuse me. So now you're taking yourself into account during the day. So every time you are maybe, not able to fulfill this, maybe you lose your temper, or you say something you regret, whatever it is, you're aware of it, right? And you're taking notes. And then at the end of the day, so, through the day you're doing that. Now at the end of the day, now you do a full accounting of your deeds. And this is muhasaba, right? So, you look back and see, how many times did I slip today? Did I slip at all? If yes, where did I slip? Did I lie? Did I backbite? Did I argue? Did I speak about things that weren't of importance to me? So it's really like record keeping and a tally. And then if, inshallah, you succeeded, then you say, what? Because you're remembering, right? Oh Allah, I can honestly say, reminding you again, be truthful, right? Don't delude yourself. Don't try to, as though astaghfirullah, we can somehow trick, Allah. A'udhu billah. That's just delusional. He knows everything. So be honest and be forthright. If you remember slipping up, you gotta hold yourself to account, right? So if you didn't, then you say, I can honestly say I did not commit any of these offenses today. And if on the other hand, you did not fulfill your vow, because remember, a vow is like a promise, right? We have to take it very seriously. Then you go back to day one. So this is the constant theme that you'll see with these exercises. You are supposed to persevere, make your vow, persevere. But if you don't, if you can't, if you fail, all you have to do is go back to step one or day one. I mean, that's difficult. Imagine if you're on day 39. What are you going to do? Subhanallah, it could happen to people. But if they take this seriously, then they'll realize, like, nope, I cannot give into this. I'm too close to the finish line. I can't go back now. So that self-awareness of how far you've come will, inshallah, encourage you to keep going. But you have to take the 40-day seriously. And then it says here, ask for forgiveness and strength in fulfilling it for the next day, and give in charity, fast, or impose some other type of disciplinary measure to benefit your soul. That's also really important. Once you reset, and go back to point one, you should also have something else, like some punitive measure that you can hold yourself further accountable to. I mentioned this in another talk recently about, if you have a problem with lying or with just being a little too loose with your tongue, that you can create a jar. People have done this, like the swear jar, the jar that, lying jar, whatever jar you want to call it. But it's a jar. You can use any jar, and what it would be used for is every time you slip up, you have to put in $1, let's say, or a coin, a quarter or something. And that way, you're holding yourself accountable. You're seeing the visual representation of how many times you've slipped. And sometimes that can be a really good reminder. Like if you are on day 5 and already you've got, $50 in the jar, clearly there's a problem, right? And so it's a good way to really hold yourself in account. And, because we are weak and nobody wants to part with that much money that fast, it's also another incentive to do that. Because at the end of your 40 days, you can then, inshallah, give that money to sadaqah, or gift it to someone. But do something like that where you can visually also have something to hold you accountable. Subhanallah. Now we're still on the tongue. So on page, by the way, if you have the book, I'm on page 48 at the top. We should remind ourselves that our eternal life and felicity in it is largely dependent upon whether our tongues are in submission to the will of Allah. SubhanAllah. Hence, we must take this seriously. Do this practice with your brothers and sisters that you spend time with, and encourage each other to be vigilant. So obviously now most of us are not really meeting with friends that often. So it would probably be better to do this in your homes, right? With your family. And so I think parents taking the lead and creating this rule of, hey, everybody, we have a jar. Anytime someone loses their temper, anytime someone says something they shouldn't, or lies or backbites, you got to hold yourself accountable. This is what we're going to do. And it doesn't have to be money necessarily. Maybe it could be a list of chores that you have to do, and you have to pull, a chore out of the jar. So it's the opposite. It's not that you're putting into the jar, but you're taking out from the jar a chore, and that would also hold you accountable. So you can create your own systems for your families, but I think it's really important to have support. Anytime you do something where you want to change your behavior or take on a new practice, it's wise to have someone to do that with, because we can hold each other accountable, and it just feels good to feel like you're not doing something on your own, right? And of course, we know this is certainly part of our faith, in that we do everything together. We're encouraged to anyway. We're encouraged to pray in Jamaat together. We're encouraged to fast together, to make Hajj together, because there is this power in numbers, right? So inshallah, try to figure out a system that works for you and your household. They go on to say that this practice requires significant discipline and effort. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala encouraged us to persevere with this verse. This is chapter 29, verse 69. Those who struggle in our way, we guide them in our paths, and Allah is with the people of excellence. Um, so this is, a reminder for us that the struggle is part of the path, right? We all are supposed to be struggling. It's not supposed to be just laid back and chill and, you're just coasting. There has to be effort, and effort there is, struggle in them. This practice will change our lives and our outlooks and will contribute to the unity of our community, as most of our trouble, if not all of it, is reaped from the harvest of our tongues. Subhanallah. That's also a very powerful reminder. If you really think about, the problems that most people have, a lot of it does come down to communication issues, problems, to words that have been, that are hurtful, weaponizing our language towards someone. So the tongue is very powerful in that it can destroy people's hearts, and we cannot diminish the power of it. So the fact that human problems, a lot of them can emanate from just this, one organ, subhanallah, is quite amazing, right? Wars have been started, conflicts, really, scandals, so many things throughout history that we can turn to. A lot of it has to do with the tongue and what it can reap. So a very powerful reminder for us to not look at its size and think and that it's not as powerful as it is, when in fact so much of the pain that we experience in this life it comes from a tongue that is not restrained, right? So once 40 consecutive days have been completed, we have habituated ourselves to uprightness, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala promises two things for our efforts. He will rectify our affairs in this world, and He will forgive our transgressions in the next. So this is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu taqullaha wa qulu qawlan sadida, right? يُصْلِحْ لَكُمْ أَعْمَالَكُمْ وَيَغْفِرْ لَكُمْ ذُنُوبَكُمْ. This is in chapter 33, verse 70 and 71. O you who believe, have taqwa and speak with uprightness. He will rectify your actions and He will forgive your wrongs. So those are the benefits of being upright. When we correct our speech, when we commit to this 40 days, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is promising us these two benefits, is that inshallah, the problems that we have in this world, because we've committed to really the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and anytime we do that, anytime we struggle against ourselves for His sake, He will remove our burdens for us, right? And He will forgive our sins. So subhanallah, the benefits again are immeasurable. And here, once we have fulfilled the exercise successfully, what remains is vigilant observance, right? Muraqabah. So continuing after we've done all of the other steps, right? Of mujahida, and we succeed, inshallah. Now it's maintaining, right? It's being vigilant. It's not, regressing back to bad habits. It's staying on course. And this is, to prevent a relapse. We must be firm with others and make clear to them that we do not want to listen to prohibited speech. This may result in the loss of a friend who is not willing to change. And that's, important. If you have come to a place where you really want to take your practice seriously, but you have people around you who don't respect your path, don't cower to that. Don't be a people pleaser and think, oh, I don't want to make a big issue out of things. No, create healthy boundaries. You can easily tell your friends and family, for example, that you don't want to, gossip anymore, and that you really don't want to participate in that, and that you'd appreciate it if they just didn't speak about people in your company. If you're making those changes and you really are doing it from that place, this is sometimes even easier, to be honest, when you have like sort of a general rule. when it comes to your changes that you're hoping to implement, and you kind of generally send those messages out. Like if you're on a WhatsApp thread with your family, your siblings, and you kind of just say, hey guys, just wanted to give you guys a heads up, I'm making some changes. I'm trying to, put some new good habits in practice. So these are some of the things that I'm going to stay away from. I really need your support. Something like that isn't putting the focus on, other people and what they're doing, right? Where you're saying, don't do this around me. It's rather saying, I don't want to do this, so please respect my boundaries in a very polite way. You're not finger pointing, pointing the finger at anybody. You're not shaming them. And hopefully they'll respect your courage and your commitment and your conviction and honor your wishes, inshallah. But if they don't and they say, nope, we can't do that, that's too, you're too religious for me, you're too strict, and you're so uptight, and you get over yourself, and they start attacking you in that way, that's clearly disrespectful, but that's also not energy you need. And those type of people, if they don't want to support you on your path, and they insist on, just being themselves around you, you can see the double standard is very clear, right? And so you have to make a choice whether or not you want that energy in your life. But of course, be gentle. Don't cut people off. That's not part of our tradition. We don't cut people off. It's just a matter of creating healthy boundaries where people, when not to spend time with certain people. Some environments are more relaxed and people feel a little bit more at liberty to do things. Other situations aren't. So just be a little bit more selective and choose wisely the company that you keep. Finally, we should keep in mind that writing falls into these categories, right? And that the internet is infested with lies, slander, argumentation, and engagement in matters of no concern. Therefore, we need to include writing in addition to speech in the vow. SubhanAllah, what a great way to end this section on guarding the tongue, because again, we are being held accountable for what is now a more common practice than maybe in previous times, right? And nowadays, we're not really socializing as much face to face. We're not having dialogue as much. We are actually using these technologies, and a lot of our communication is on text, right? Whether it's emails or text messages, WhatsApp messages, DMs, whatever. We tend to be engaging a lot in writing. So it's very powerful to hold ourselves accountable, not to make it literal and say, that it's only speech that's verbalized that this applies to, but it's just what's emanating from you. It's their habits that you want to get rid of, these negative habits, and they can come in the form of verbal speech or written speech, but at the end of the day, they're your thoughts manifested. And that's what we're talking about. Why are those thoughts even there in the first place? Hold yourself accountable. So that's the section on guarding the tongue. Now we're gonna, in the time we have left, inshallah, I'll get to this next section as well, which is, forgive me, let me see here. Okay, so yeah, alhamdulillah. Now we're gonna talk about guarding the eyes. This is page 49, okay? So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, tell the believing men to lower their gaze and guard their modesty, and tell the believing women to lower their gaze and guard their modesty. And this is chapter 24, verse 30 and 31. Now here, it's interesting. There's some commentary that I'd like to read about this verse. It says the scholars differ about the meaning and implication of this verse, but generally what is prohibited is to look at anything that is deemed nakedness in sacred law. The aura, the parts of our body that should be covered. If anything falls into that category, this would apply. Though not all the scholars agree on what constitutes nakedness. For the majority of scholars, this includes, for a man, the entire body of a woman, with the exception of her face and hands. So for a man to look at any part of a woman, especially obviously someone who's not related to him, that is exposed, with the exception of the hands and the face, it would be considered looking at her nakedness, right? So that's a pretty clear, boundary there, the face and hands. And then for a woman, or excuse me, and for another man, so for a man to look at another man, what is between the navel and the knees? So that is the aura of a woman, is everything except for her hands and face. And then the aura of a man is everything between the navel and knees. So one would not look at those things, right? Now it says that, however, the scholars consider anything from which we derive sexual pleasure prohibited to look at unless it is of our lawful spouse. This is really important because, as we know, we live in a time where we live in a society which is hypersexualized, and there's a lot of exploitation of these matters in every part of our society, and therefore what that has done is it's created things that we would consider really maybe not a sexual part of one's body, but it has become, unfortunately, fetishized or sexualized. There are entire, there's groups and people who are obsessed, for example, with a woman's ankles, right? Something so simple that you would think, oh, it's just part of her foot or feet. Feet is another very, subhanAllah, this is, again, part of our world now, where these things have been turned into objects of obsession for a lot of people. So this idea that if you have an inclination towards a particular body part, like an arm, a leg, a hand, the neck, anything that arouses these feelings in you, that you have to, for yourself, it's different for everybody, you have to be that self-aware where you lower your gaze, right? This verse would apply in that situation as well. For this reason, the body of a man is prohibited for a woman to look at if it arouses her carnal instincts. So, for example, we know, like, the navel and the knee, right? We just mentioned is what is incumbent upon a man to cover always. But sometimes, you might see men without a shirt on, they're walking outside, there may be, a lifeguard at the beach, whatever. But if that's something that it arouses certain feelings in you, you have to know that just because it's not technically aura, for you it is, right? For you that would apply because you have a particular, that's a weakness. And so similarly, though, for a man, looking at the face and hands of a woman is also prohibited if that arouses his carnal instinct. So again, same thing that what I just said. If there's a particular desire that is aroused when looking at something that is not technically considered aura, like the hands or the feet or the face, but for a person that does, those feelings do come out, it would be considered aura, right? That's what this is, clarifying here. And then they go on to say that the first glance is not written against a person. However, if one derives pleasure and does not avert one's glance, or if one follows it with a second glance, then it is considered a minor sin. So, it's, again, we're living in an era which is we're bombarded with imagery everywhere we go. It's sometimes hard to look away because, you could be walking innocently, down the street, and then all of a sudden there's a magazine cover that you didn't, anticipate seeing lying on the ground, or a billboard or something else, or maybe, an advertisement on a storefront window, something that you're not prepared to see, but subhanAllah, it kind of just comes in your face. We have to self-regulate, and this is where becoming aware of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allah is watching me at all times, He knows what I'm doing, and having taqwa of Him. And that's the response of taqwa, is that you look away, you completely turn your eyes, and if you're really struggling and you're tempted to look again, to say astaghfirullah, to ask Allah for strength, and to remember it's better for you to have that type of restraint than to look and to remember, these are inroads to the heart. Every time we don't guard these inroads, whether it's the eyes or the ears or the tongue, we're letting it's a passageway for thoughts and ideas that are very destructive to come into our hearts and later plague us, right? Which is what happens to many people when they look at images or allow themselves to indulge by looking at something that they shouldn't. Then they're plagued with it for days, for sometimes months. They can't get this image out of their mind. So this is why we're taught immediately look away and don't go back for more, you know. Ibn al-Qattan said there is a consensus that the eye is not connected to any enormity, but it is the quickest inroad to the destruction of the heart. So powerful, right? Subhanallah. So we don't have, sins that are associated, or big sins, major sins that are related to the eye, right? But this is important. The fastest way to destroy the heart is through the eye, right? SubhanAllah. We have to really think about that, especially in this day and age when we have a pandemic. It's literally a pandemic, not talking about coronavirus or the quarantine. I'm talking about the pandemic of pornography, which has unfortunately infected every corner of the world. This terrible, evil that is everywhere now. It's so ubiquitous. You can find it throughout the Muslim lands, even the sacred cities. It's astaghfirullah. May Allah protect our children and all of us from falling into the black hole, the poisonous well, this toxic space of being, of watching this horrible stuff. And you see it all over. The research is unbelievable. How young, some of people are exposed to this because it's so widespread, and you can find it everywhere. A lot of children are being exposed to these images, and they leave their mark. I have heard horrific stories about children being exposed to images that they were never meant to see and should never have been ever created. A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. But they watched those things, stumbled upon it accidentally, doing an innocent search, and their parents had no idea. And without, those safeguards in our browsers and our internet, there's a lot of things out there that our kids could get exposed to. But so many horrific stories of children being exposed to things that really impact their heart. They have trauma from it. And marriages again being broken up, and this is not just men that are afflicted with this. There are certainly many women who also have this tribulation. I have been messaged by sisters who are also afflicted with this problem, asking for help. What can they do? So this is the problem, or the awareness that we need to have. The eye can destroy the spiritual heart faster than anything else, because images are so powerful. And to recall those images, the eye is itself such a powerful, a blessing that we've been given. But the fact that in our mind's eye we can recreate things that we see with our visual eye is also something that we have to think about. So when we take in images on a computer screen or television or film or what have you that are inappropriate, that are haram, that are clearly a violation of everything we're talking about here, when we take those images in, even if it's for a split second, even if it's for longer than that, it's already done damage, because it's hard to erase the image. That's the thing. It's like a permanent stain on the heart. Like you've just tattooed your heart with something really dark and evil. And many people who have become addicted and they try to overcome their addiction suffer greatly. People who can't get images out of their mind as soon as they start to pray or do something for the sake of Allah, these images will pop up in their mind. These are real experiences, so we have to be very, very careful with guarding our eyes when it comes to sensory images and images that we see, on the screen. Bismillah. So the exercise for the eyes is to make a commitment to Allah every morning, same as we've been hearing, right? This idea of vowing, making a commitment to Allah for 40 continuous days to not look at anything that's prohibited, to be very vigilant and do the same exact steps as before. Be vigilant, watch over ourselves, right? And keep in mind that averting the glance is really an essential practice to protecting the eyes. If we want to protect the heart, which is connected to the eyes, right? This quick inroad to the heart, we have to be in the practice of looking away. like looking away, just looking down, looking aside, looking up, wherever you need to look, to not look at something that's prohibited. Do it, get in the practice of it, and inshallah, continue that for those 40 days. In our culture, we have what could be termed an in-your-face bombardment of images and ads, as well as an immodest world of fashion and apparel. It is thus extremely important with this exercise that we not become neurotic about our situations. Lowering the gaze is a profound spiritual practice in any time and place, and can be done with dignity and a naturalness that does not lead to obsessive behaviors that may be detrimental and lead to social pathology. Such an important reminder. We have to keep in mind that because these things are so rampant and ubiquitous everywhere in society, our attempt at restraining ourselves and putting these things into practice should be done with a naturalness. There shouldn't be this awkwardness where we impose ourselves onto other people and become so obsessive and kind of, again, neurotic about it, that we lose our social skills, and we're not really aware of how we are affecting other people. If you work in a work environment, for example, with non-Muslims, and maybe one day you come to work and there's a party and it's like everybody's dressed in maybe party clothing, and they don't quite look professional, and you find yourself surrounded by people who are dressed in clothing that is clearly not correct or to look at. This would not be a situation where you should make everybody feel awkward and strange and cause a scene and walk around covering your eyes like this and just creating like all that attention on yourself because of your discomfort, and you're trying so hard to avert your eyes. This is just a matter of looking away and trying to be as professional about it and as sensible about it as you can. I remember, this is just something for those who wear glasses, it might work. It worked for me when I was during Hajj and Umrah. I used to have a habit of taking my glasses off whenever I would walk from the hotel to the masjid. Because sometimes, if you've never been to the sacred cities before as a Westerner, some things may, for the first time anyway, be a little, just maybe culture shock or just things you're not used to. You'll see people doing things because this is part of their own cultures. And remember, you'll see people from all over the world coming to these beautiful cities, but they bring their own natural ways. And so if you find yourself judging, people like, oh, why are they doing that? Oh, that's so gross. Or why did they do this thing? Sometimes people will, maybe touch their nose or clean or spit right in front of you, or do something that's just not common to our cultures here or your other cultures. Instead of allowing your heart to judge them and be critical, what I found myself was like, I don't want to do that. I don't want to see my fellow Muslim brothers and sisters in a negative light when I have no idea who they are, what they've been through, why they do what they do, and I'm just going to let my own Western ideals or ideas make me feel as though I'm somehow, astaghfirullah, better than them. I didn't want to do that because I found myself looking at people with sometimes that like curiosity or disdain even. So I said, I'm going to free myself of the burden. So I take my glasses off and I would just walk, and I have, at that point, I didn't have very good vision. I mean, alhamdulillah, my vision's got a little bit better. But at that point, it was very hard to see clearly anyway. I'd see a lot of blurry images. I'd see a lot of blurry, people, but I would not be able to see specific things, which was a great blessing. And alhamdulillah, I encourage, if you ever have to go to like a public market or, even the beach, sometimes you have to go with your families and places where you try not to look, but if that's something that you can do proactively to say, Allah, I really want to lower my gaze. I don't want to be tempted. I don't want to look at people. Do it, inshallah. Take these measures. Allah is a witness to your efforts, right? But that's just something that you can do, inshallah. And then try this for 40 days. And again, if you fail, stop, restart, and try again. So that was the end of this section, chapter 4 of guarding the tongue and the eyes. For next time, inshallah, in 2 weeks, we will do the exercise 4, guarding the ears and the stomach. And inshallah, I'll see if I don't know if I'll be able to finish it next time because there's quite a few guarding the private parts and the hands. So we'll try to do maybe 2 more sections next time, inshallah. But let me go ahead and check if there are any questions. Bismillah. I'm going to just check the Facebook page. And Brother Salman too, if you can let me know if you're there. I know sometimes you're busy, but if you are there, let me know please if there's any questions on YouTube. Okay. Alhamdulillah. So I don't see any questions. Oh, sorry. I'm looking at the wrong thing. Forgive me. 1 second here. Yeah, I don't see any questions on the YouTube page, but let me go ahead. I mean, the Facebook page. Let me look at YouTube. If there are no questions, then inshallah we can end in dua, and I will see you guys in a couple of weeks. Bi'idhnillah. Okay, alhamdulillah. So yeah, I don't see any questions, but mashallah, we have some international viewers, people mentioning that they're from Morocco. Assalamu alaikum, mashallah, from Morocco, from Al-Maghrib. People from Pakistan, Assalamu alaikum. Thank you for tuning in. I'm very honored that you're spending your evening or morning, likely morning, with us here in California. Jazakumullah khairan. Inshallah, I hope this was beneficial to all of you. Thank you for your support. Please support MCC East Bay for all of the wonderful programs they put out week after week. Alhamdulillah. Check out their Facebook page for more content, their YouTube page, inshallah. And please make dua for all of the staff and the volunteers and all of our teachers. May Allah bless them. Sheikh Hamza Yusuf, Imam Zaid Shakir, for this incredible contribution of agenda to change our condition, and all of our other teachers as well. May Allah bless them all. I thank you so much for spending your Sunday evening with me personally and with us here. We'll go ahead and end in dua. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك. اللهم صل وسلم وبارك على سيدنا ومولانا وحبيبنا محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم تسليما كثيرا. جزاكم الله خيرا. Inshallah, I wish you all a wonderful rest of your evening or day or morning, and we will see you in 2 weeks. Inshallah. Assalamu alaikum.